Thanks for joining us at the Business Growth Cafe, where each week we select from a menu of topics for a focused discussion with an industry expert to provide insights that can impact your business's growth. With your host, Angelo Ponzi.
Hi, I'm Angelo Ponzi, your host here at the Business Growth Cafe, and thank you for joining us. Today at the cafe, I'm excited to have LeiLani Quiray, CEO of Be the Change HR, to discuss the very changing role of the HR in business and not only how it can protect your business, but help it grow as well. LeiLani, welcome.
Thank you.
My wife spent her younger years in Hawaii, and so I go to say your name, and I think is it Hawaiian?
Yeah,
okay.
It is.
Not that I'm going to tie you into my cats, which we talked about earlier, but my cats are named Kalani.
Okay.
And Makai. So I have Hawaiian named cats running around as well. So before we get started, take a few minutes, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and about your organization.
So my name is LeiLani Quiray, sometimes hard to say. My company is Be the Change HR. It's a social enterprise. So it's human resources and then philanthropy tied into one. I have been doing human resources for over 20 years now. It's super nerdy, but I really like it. I've had my whole career in HR and then just recently launched this company a couple years ago. So I'm super excited to share not only my talents in human resources, but also the idea that businesses give back. Very important.
You've launched this business a couple of years ago. So we're going to talk a lot about business growth and in what you do and how it impacts businesses. But let's talk about your decision to start a business as a young entrepreneur.
Right.
I think we were talking a few minutes ago. You've had a few starts and stops. I call them dead bodies along the road. I've had quite a few of those.
Right.
But every once in a while, we hit one that are really good. I've had two so far. Hopefully this one is my third. But talk about yours.
So the first two, the first one I named funny after Legally Blonde, Elle Woods. I named it LHR Solutions. I thought it was clever and funny. But, after about 9 months, it failed. And then some years later decided I was going to do a PR company, and that didn't last very long either. But as I grew in my career and I continued to climb the corporate ladder, there was always this passion inside of me that I always wanted to volunteer and give back. And one of the first organizations I did that with was Working Wardrobes as one of their success coaches. But I found it difficult working in-house to ask for the time that I wanted to do that. And so as I grew in my career, I started thinking, maybe I can do this as a business. And so I started to just play around with the idea in my head for years. I would buy URLs. One of them I bought was HR Consultants for Change, right? And then some years ago, I had one of those years where it was just a really tough year. And at one point, I had this epiphany, stop making money for other people doing HR. Because I was in organizations where I would lead a department and be in charge of hundreds of client organizations and thousands of employees. And I thought, I'm always in a position where I am either building human resources for someone or I'm fixing it. And I was thinking, there's a way I could figure out how to do philanthropy, human resources, start my own business. And I felt like it was time. And so I took some time off from work. And in that time, I started strategizing how I was going to get this done. Of course, logo, all that fun stuff. And then launched. And here we are now. And it's been super fun to do this. But what's been more interesting is how I've figured out a way to weave the two things, HR and philanthropy again. And it matches and runs a parallel to what I do in my career and what my talents are. And that is helping people get back to work, right? So what do HR people do on the front end? Interview people, we look at resumes. That's what I'm doing. It's human resources in the organization. I work with small business, anywhere from one employee all the way up to 150. And then I get also involved in several nonprofits in Orange County helping people get back to work.
Looking at the philanthropy side and tying that into your business, is that something that's just been ingrained in you? I mean, the way you've been describing it, it's really has become an integral part of your business.
You can hear the passion, right? So without going into the long story, I've been in a position where I too needed help, right? And so when I got myself to a certain place where I felt like I was mentally, physically healthy enough, I told myself, I'm going to turn around and help others climb themselves out of a hole, so to speak.
Okay.
And so that's why Working Wardrobes was so important. They have a program where it was like an 8-week program, and it went through all sorts of skills to get ready to get a job. And I started doing that, and then I continued doing that throughout my career. So fast forward to today, I'm offering to nonprofits, classes for job readiness that they may not have it. I mentor women to get them ready to get back into, like, to be completely self-sustainable. So not just, job readiness skills, but I bring in experts like financial planning, or I brought in attorneys and stuff like that to help them figure out, okay, what do you need in order to support yourself to become fully independent. And then I'm really excited next month, or no, in 3 weeks, I'm doing a class for women coming out of human trafficking and the sex industry to do a job readiness class to get them that first really healthy job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow. God bless you. What are you most proud of then? Because you've done a lot of great things and you're doing a lot of great things, but give me a story. What are you most proud of?
My son, I'm super proud of him. We just came back from New York, as you know. But one thing I'm most proud of is building this business. It's funny, when I did it, I didn't know that it was a thing, right? I know that like corporate social responsibility is like a big buzzword now. But before, it was truly from a place of like, this is what I want to do. This is the right thing for me to do in my career. And it would be a example to other people in for-profit business that, yes, we're out here to make money, make a living, right? Maybe make a lot of money, but also we are given the opportunity to give back because we have that. And I'm most proud of kind of capturing that. And for me, the vision is I want to be someone in this space who inspires others to do that, whether it's in their own business or in their personal life, whether, volunteer once a year, just something.
Okay. So for, I'll say startups or small businesses that are, just really getting going, and a young entrepreneur yourself, what business advice would you give them? What have you learned along the road that you want to impart to our listeners, that things that they should consider when really getting their new business going? And then actually let's talk about, add in the HR pitfalls and what can they do to mitigate those?
It's so funny you asked this question because I just wrote about it. It's difficult starting a business. There's the idea you have to get business, you have to make money. There's all these things you have to put together. For me personally, I started a business and didn't realize, oh my gosh, I have to run a business. Like, it's not just human resources I'm doing, from all the accounting that has to be done and the marketing and all that. And that was kind of a shock to me. So I would definitely recommend the book E-Myth. Super simple read, but it gives it to someone kind of clearly when you start a business, like how do you handle that? But the thing I was writing about, which was interesting, is imposter syndrome. So when I first started the business and you get out there, you're like, okay, what do I do now? I network. I go network and I get the word out there and try to find clients. And I would find myself in situations where, and I described this to a friend, I felt like I was a 5-year-old in a suit and heels and that no one saw like that I was this little kid. And I was surrounded by all these successful business people and but feeling intimidated inside. And that person told me that's imposter syndrome. Giving it a name made it easier. And so the advice I would give is that you can have, the capital to start, you can put everything in place, you can get all your everything you need to run a business up and running, right? But the one thing that I found that I had to harness even more was the voice in my head telling me those types of things. Like, what do you think you're doing? Like, you're not going to be successful. Like, you should just quit. And realizing, it's just we all have it, right? So we all have
self-doubt, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's you give presentations in front of groups, I give presentations, and somebody said to me one day, "Don't you get scared?" I go, "I'm scared out of my mind." Yeah. But I know it's only for a short period of time. Is that I used to play in a band. Anytime we would get ready to play, in my mind I'd always say showtime, and so I still do that to this day. Just before I speak, I'd say to myself, it's showtime. And then about 30 seconds in, all the butterflies go away.
Yeah.
And so you look for those ways to help build that self-confidence because you know what you know. And I always look at it this way. You know what you know. The audience doesn't know what you know. So whatever comes out of your mouth is what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
And to me, for yourself and for those listeners, really having that confidence in moving forward is so important because if you cast self-doubt on yourself, is that exuded out to
right? It's self-talk,
customers.
right?
Yeah,
like you have to talk to yourself like, that's not true. I know what I'm doing. I'll be successful. Do the work hard. So it's harnessing that voice in your head. That ultimately it's that voice that's trying to keep you safe, right? Like, don't take risks. You stay safe over here in your little bubble. But that's not what life is for. It's to do that, take risks and build things like a business. And so I think that would be my number one advice: is don't listen to that voice. Really good positive self-talk is helpful. And you were asking about HR pitfalls and with new business. Oh man, there's so many. That's why I said that. It depends on where you're at in the United States. But if we're talking about California specifically, I swear there's a new law, whether it's through legislation or case law, that pops up every other month. And it's a big one, right? And so one of the ones that happened last April of 2018, would be the Dynamex case.
Right.
Making it difficult to classify independent contractors as independent contractors. They should be employees. And I see that a lot. And I think when you're starting a new business, is it easy for you to fly under the radar and improperly classifying someone? Possibly. But I always tell my clients, at one point, it's going to come up. It's going to come up. Someone who's an independent contractor will file unemployment, and then the EDD turns around and looks at you and says, well, you never filed your DE-9. There's no Social Security. So what are you saying? This person is saying they're an employee. And then they go and they audit all of your 1099s. The other one is classifying, hourly, non-exempt, and then salary exempt. So that's, paying someone salary, you don't pay them overtime, they are regulated by breaks, and then you have the hourly people. And I see that a lot. Another big one this year is if you have 5 or more employees, you're now required to do 1 hour sexual harassment training for your non-supervisory employees, and then 2 for your supervisory employees. And the government, of course, they said, we're going to give you some help. We're going to give you the course. And then they announced, wait, the course isn't ready until the end of the year. So you're going to need to get a certified trainer.
How is that documented from a proof standpoint?
So you need someone who is qualified to do it, and that qualified person should be documenting it properly. So if you have someone who does it, you'll get a copy of the training. You'll also get like a completion certificate, an attestation that they took the training, and then if it's live, like a sign-in sheet, and then you just keep all that documentation together. I highly doubt they're going to go out and start finding people for it. What's more important is, let's say you end up in a situation where you're under investigation by the EEOC, so the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and they're going to turn to the employer and be like, hey, did you do your training? And when you say no, it goes against an employer because it's something that you have to do for due diligence. And then also, we should be training people not to harass each other in the workplace, sure. Right? What's right and what's wrong, and things you shouldn't do.
Are these kind of typical areas where small businesses fall down, just not being compliant, if you will?
Yeah, because they don't know what they don't know. And like I said, the law is changing all the time. Usually you have a new business, either they don't know human resources at all or someone's sort of doing it. And there's so many little nuances that most people don't know. Like you can't put, if someone has a criminal record on a job application, you can't ask someone's salary now, right, when they're applying for a job. And so there's these little things that I'll see. So I think it's helpful whether they get someone to do an audit or they go and find a resource themselves to say, okay, is my house in order? Because hopefully businesses grow, right? So you want a really solid HR foundation. So when you get to the point where you have a lot more exposure because you have a lot more employees, that it's nice and buttoned up. And then on top of that, we're talking about like foundational regulatory HR. We want to talk about strategy, right? Because I think businesses grow and they grab some person off the street and say, I need to fill this seat. Yeah, like do the job, and they're not methodical or strategic about it. And I think I encourage businesses to start thinking, when you're even hiring your first employee, it's not just your gut level feeling that you should be using when you hire them. Use the tools out there like predictive index or something like that to build a model of the perfect employee and have someone match that.
One of the things that I always look at is job descriptions in the interviewing process.
Yeah.
So I found over the years that most job descriptions don't necessarily match what the job is. And I was talking to somebody else where they actually said that the person, when they were having the review, actually brought out the job description. And I can say in all my years, I can't actually ever remember anybody bringing out the job description and saying, oh, by the way, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're matching the job. That's good. So how important really are job descriptions, not only in the hiring process, but in the evaluation process.
And there's other actually avenues that it's good for. It's funny that you say this because this morning I was at a client in a room full of 30 people, and I was going over the template document that I have them start on first, because I have the person in the role actually start to fill out like the essential job functions. And they looked at me like they wanted to maybe not kill me, but like, oh gosh, she's giving us homework, right? It's really important. So it's important, you build a job description. We talk about proper classification, exempt, non-exempt. It's a communication tool. It's a communication tool for the job ad. It's a communication tool, like you said, for, when someone's doing a review, what their job duties are, so it's clear. It might change constantly. That's fine. Keep updating it. But the other thing that us HR people know it's helpful for is workers' comp. So sometimes the doctor wants to see, what does this person do, not only in their essential job functions, but physically, and can we send them back to work? Something similar is Employees with Disabilities Act. So you take a job description and maybe someone has a disability, so the doctor will want to see, okay, what does the person have to do, and say, what kind of accommodation do we have to do for them? So it's not just for the job and the ad and the performance, but also on us HR people know it's a protective thing for the business as well.
Okay. Now, the other thing I see, and I was working as a fractional chief strategy officer for an organization, and I've talked about this before, and I ended up, seemed like I was in almost every interview of senior executives. And my nature is to prep and do some research and understand. Yet so many of the other senior people were walking into the interview, reading the resume as they were walking in. But what was even worse is they didn't know how to ask the right questions to really understand who this individual is. Right? Is not, tell me about yourself, and that was kind of basic questions. What are some tips, if you will, 2 or 3 real strategic questions to understand the individual and really pull that out of them versus just going through something that's formulaic?
Yeah. I think you should prep before the interview. So it just depends on what the role is, and prepare questions like that. But the best questions to ask are what we call behavioral-based interview questions, where you can get down to the nitty-gritty if someone actually knows what they're talking about. So if you have a technical position, prepare that question prior to ask them. I don't know, if you're talking about coding software, then you go into, you keep asking questions to drill down how much they actually know. Okay. So I think that not necessarily, which, by the way, one of my favorite questions to ask is, tell me about yourself. If you give people like enough rope, they just go. Like, they just start talking about themselves, and it's nice to see their personality come out and have them tell you about themselves, how they would like. So that's one of my favorite questions. And then, like I said, the behavioral-based ones where you formulate it ahead of time in order to understand and get what you need to know out of that person. And then I always like asking fun questions, right? And I prepare them before, or maybe not, but we would do ones about, like, if you had a pizza box and a pair of scissors and you were delivering pizza, like, how would you wow the customer? Something like that. Or what's your favorite Netflix show? To kind of get more of their personality.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Okay. So one of the questions I always ask guests is, what keeps you up at night thinking about growing your business?
That exact thing. The fact that we are getting ready to scale. I'm on year 2, and it's time. Everything that isn't the core function of human resources has been farmed out. What keeps me up at night is I'm going to be responsible for other people's livelihood. And I already feel that. And I've heard other business owners say, we have to make payroll. That's a thing, right? That keeps you up. And already I'm starting to think, I'll build this business, start bringing on other, HR professionals pretty soon, actually. That keeps me up at night. Like, okay, you need to be prepared, have a solid foundation enough to be able to support that and those people and their livelihoods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there before. Not there now, but I've been there before, and it is scary. I think I've got time. One last question. If you could do it over again, what would you do differently?
Like my life, or
no. Yes. Yeah. No, we don't need to go back that far,
okay.
but the development of this business.
HR people are notoriously known for not being great at accounting and finance, and I am one to say I am not great at those two things. So I think even though I was involved in the accounting in my books really early on, I would have been more into that and understanding that, sitting down with someone who is a consultant or someone who could coach me and tell me, okay, here's what you need to pay attention to. I'm doing that now, but it's like, well, I should have done that, when I first started to really understand the one piece of my business that I didn't know much about.
I actually had a show earlier on, And the whole premise was that small businesses don't really understand the story that their financials tell them. I agree with you on that. I think that brings us to an end. Believe it or not, we are down to the last 30 seconds or so. So, LeiLani, how can they contact you? How can they reach you and all those good things about you?
Yeah, if you have any questions, insight, wisdom, my email is LeiLani, LeiLani, at bethechangehr.org.
All right. And you're on LinkedIn and all that good stuff?
Yeah, all the platforms, even Instagram. If you want some inspiration, we're at bethechangeHR, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube even, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the cafe today. If you'd like to find out more about me, read my blogs, view my show videos, or sign up to receive some future information, please look at theponzigroup.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if your business is ready for growth and you need a CMO, but you're not ready for a full-time person yet, connect with me. I welcome the opportunity to explore the benefits of using a fractional CMO. Please subscribe to this show at thebusinessgrowthcafe.com, or we are on all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Spreaker, and many other platforms coming soon. Join me next week for lunch at the Business Growth Cafe.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion at the Business Growth Cafe with your host, Angelo Ponzi. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast and visit our website at www.businessgrowthcafe.com. Read Angelo Ponzi's blogs at www.theponzigroup.com.